welcome to another episode of the Courtside Conference Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Stroud. And as usual with me is the boss man, Derek. D, how you doing, brother?
Thanks. I'm good, bro. How you been?
I'm pretty good. Can't complain.
Good.
And today we have a special guest, the man with the master plan, who pioneered the bubble experiment. We got Keith Smith from Celtics Block with us today. How you doing, Keith?
I'm doing well. You're too kind. You're building me up too much, man.
Nah, you deserve it.
Most
It
definitely.
was a little skeptical at first, but the plane went off though, so glad you do.
There it is.
Hopefully the NBA cut you a check pretty soon.
Yeah, I don't think that one's in the mail.
Yeah.
No, we don't send some letters. We don't get right on it. As soon as we finish recording this.
There it is. I'll take it.
But all right, but you're a Celtics fan, just like we are though. So you mind telling us how you became a fan?
Yeah, I grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up just south of Boston. My teams that I grew up on were the 80s and 90s teams with Larry Bird. So as a kid, growing up in the Boston area, Larry Bird was basically the greatest thing ever in sport. And I will fight that to the end. For me, it was, I like baseball, I like football, but basketball just, man, it captured me right from the beginning as a kid, and I've never, loved another sport the same way that I love basketball. So yeah, it's been a while, but I absolutely love it. I love it as much now as I did, when I first started watching games.
Also, how'd you so you live in Florida now, right?
I do, yeah. I live in the Orlando area, yeah.
How long you been down there?
About 20, over 20 years now. It's about 22 total. I came down here, went back home and finished up school, and then came back down here again. So it's been a while. I've been down here almost as long as I lived in Mass. So, which is a whole scary thought because I don't really want to ever call myself a Floridian, but but then we have days like today where it's like in the 60s outside and I'm absolutely freezing. So that's kind of how it goes.
You don't want the Florida man tag.
No, not if I can avoid it.
You moved down there for work, school, family?
Yeah, I did. I did an internship with Disney.
Cool.
Loved it. I wanted to come back to work for Disney again. So after I went home, I finished up school. I stayed connected with the company. And then I came back down here, did another internship, which that led into full time. And I worked for Disney for almost 20 years total time. And then left them in the tail end of February to cover the NBA full time.
Awesome. You're still freelancing, or you have a full-time gig for a website?
Still freelancing. Yeah, I was set up in a pretty good way with NBC Sports and Slam Magazine, and unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, they were hit as well, and I ended up having to get furloughed from both of those places. So I'm still with a couple places freelance, but we're hopeful something will pop eventually.
Oh yeah, some will probably. You do really good work for what it's worth, so some will find you.
Almost definitely.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
No problem. Probably one of my favorite cap guys on the timeline who always real deep in that. That's too hard for me to figure out on my own. So I appreciate you guys. I really do.
No, man, it's a labor of love. That's no doubt.
Definitely. So though, your wife and kids doing great during this time?
Yeah, everything is good. They're good. We're doing well. Thankfully, it's we've stayed healthy. Everybody in the family stayed healthy. So I'm gonna knock on wood real quick, and hopefully it stays that way.
That's great. How was your holiday?
Yeah, it was good. Low key. We followed the rules. We didn't do any big gatherings or get all crazy with big parties or anything. We kept it small, just us, and hung out. And then with NBA free agency going on over it, it was there was a lot of basketball time happening.
A lot of basketball. And let's get into some basketball. We finally had the Jordan Hayward saga coming to an end. Just yesterday, really.
Thank God.
Yeah. He's gone to the Hornets for $120 And what did we send over there? Some second round picks in exchange for
Yep.
the trade exception.
Yep.
So how does that work? Because everybody's saying we don't have the full one because we're hard capped, right?
Yeah, so well, they have the full trade exception. Unfortunately, they can only use part of it. So how that works is anytime in an NBA trade, when you send one player out and you take back less money than you bring in, you create a trade exception for the difference. Now, with the Celtics in this case, they didn't take a single player back. So really, what they did was they paid the Hornets in terms of second round picks to get to do a sign and trade for Gordon Hayward. The Hornets, they didn't do anything different than what they were going to do anyway. It doesn't change anything on their side or on Hayward's side. So they get a couple second round picks really for nothing, just for being good partners. So what ends up happening is the Celtics created about a $28.5 million trade exception. And then what will happen now is the Celtics will have that to use for 1 year. Trade exceptions are good for a year. So what happens with the hard cap? Because they signed Tristan Thompson to the full mid-level exception of about 9.3 million. What happens there is if you use the full mid-level, you become hard capped. And that's at about 6 million above the luxury tax line is where the hard cap line is. So what the Celtics can do is they could go trade for a player who makes, let's call it about 21 million. In that it's close enough in that range. So they would go get that player, sign him for or not sign, but trade for a player for 21 million, who makes up to 21 million. And then that would keep them under the hard cap. Anything other than that, they'd have to send some money out to increase the amount of that trade exception they can use.
Okay, and are they able to split that between more than one player, or can only be used on one player?
No, yeah, it can be split up. That's the good part
Okay.
about a trade exception. You could go, get a guy who makes 10 million and another guy who makes 10 million, and you're good as long as the salary for the player or the players that are coming in fit inside the trade exception. It works. There's no issue there. What you can't do is that they also have a trade exception for about 4.7 for Menace Cantor being traded, and then another one for about 2.6 from when Vincent Poirier was traded.
And you can't use those three in conjunction with each other, right?
Correct. You can't add them all together. So they can't take the 28, the 5, and the 2 and add them all up and go get a $35 million guy. That doesn't work. You also can't add the $28 million trade exception to the to a player, so they couldn't add it to a player who makes 10 million and go get a $38 million player. It doesn't work that way. So you can use them and it's all good. You just don't have to push it too far that way.
Okay, I forgot we had the other two, so that gives us a little bit of leeway.
Yeah, it does. The little pieces like that they can come in helpful, down the line.
Definitely. Are there any names you have off top of your head you think would help?
There's a ton of guys. I mean, it's like 300 something guys fit within that Hayward one, right? So, we could sit here and go through the whole list of, he's good, he's not, he's good, he's not. But for me, I think this is going to be something that is going to be used later. Maybe around the trade deadline. Potentially, it'll get used. In next off season, because again it'll carry into next off season. So I don't think the Celtics are going to be any big rush to use this trade exception, just because there really isn't a point to that. There is no big rush to use it right now. The roster is basically done. I think with adding Tristan Thompson and Jeff Teague today. Officially, I think the Celtics are pretty much done unless something really great comes their way unexpectedly. They're probably not making any more additions right now. The other challenge is with this year specifically, because of the COVID concerns and all that, these teams are already, training camp's going to last for what feels about 5 minutes. before we get into games. So these guys need to get in there, get their work done, and get moving on with that. So the last thing you want to be doing is we're a big roster shakeup right now, just as guys are starting to get back into town.
Definitely.
Do you think it's possible that they might go after like a veteran point guard with Kimba possibly being sidelined for the start of the season?
Yeah, it could happen, but I think it is more likely what you're going to see them do is let that roll and then see what develops as the season goes along. And there are a lot of guys for if you went for $4.7 million trade exception, the Cantor one, there's a lot of different guys you could bring in on that one without having to even dip into that big Hayward trade exception, because there's just a lot of guys who make money in that range. I think what they did with adding Jeff Teague is that's the protection a little bit for if Walker can't play. Jeff Teague's a guy you can push in. He can either slide up to be the primary backup, or he could start some games. He's done a lot of that over his career. Jeff Teague's not going to come in and score 25 points a game like Kemba does and, do all this great stuff, but he's going to be steady. He's going to be solid. And that's what I think they were looking for. And then beyond that, they've got Marcus Smart, of course, can do a lot of the primary ball handling. And then you have Peyton Pritchard and Tremont Waters as your, deeper depth guys behind Walker. If
I like
you need
Tremont
to dip into them. Yeah, I like him too, and I think they did, good work to get him back on a two-way contract. I think, this year two-way contracts are kind of more just a, real true extension of the roster. Guys are going to be up so much that I don't think it's overly likely we're going to see Tremont Waters spend a lot of time in the G League, just because guys, they're going to want to have that. And I think for Boston specifically, they are definitely going to be sitting Kemba at times, whether it's due to injury or rest. He's not going to play the full boat like he normally would.
Right. And I like what's the kid named? The Nesmith? That's the guy.
Yeah, Nesmith.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like him a lot with the core players too. I think Grant gets a lot more minutes. He can kind of play make a little bit too. If that's
he could do a little bit. He's more of going to be a shooter initially.
Yeah, definitely.
In the league. You're not going to see him do too much playmaking. But the good news is, right, we saw at the end of last season, really right before the season went on pause and then in the bubble, Jason Tatum's ability to take on increased playmaking was really big. So I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on as well. I think the Celtics kind of work best. They don't have the Chris Paul type where it's put it in his hands. He's going to run and set the offense and run pick and roll and then run it again and then run it again. Yeah. It's more just get into sets, get into plays, and everybody better be able to do a little bit of handling and a little bit of passing, and that's when they would function best as an offense.
Right, they do a little playmaking by committee and rebound by committee, stuff like that. Go ahead, Derek.
Are we pretty much giving up on Carson Edwards at this point?
It's close. He's going to have to show a lot. I never felt like Carson Edwards was going to be a point guard in the NBA. I thought his best hope was to come in and be kind of one of those microwave bench scorer type of guys who comes in and, he just, if he's got it going, you play him. If he doesn't, you sit him. Yeah. And unfortunately, he, very little did he show even with that. Ability to do that, and that's a little bit upsetting, right? Because that was the hope for him. Now that was also putting a lot on a guy who was a second round pick. Yeah, so maybe he just needed a year or two to get used to the NBA. But when you're his size, and you're roughly 6'1", and you're not a great ball handler, you're not a great passer, he doesn't have tremendous speed. You got to knock down those open shots, otherwise it's going to be really tough for you to make an impact.
Definitely. I think he kind of had like a little confidence issues last season too, which really helped. So, like I said, maybe another year we'll doing some good. Now he's got used to it. So,
yeah, definitely too. Think about a guy like him too, who is coming off that ridiculous NCAA tournament run. A little, now what feels like forever ago, year and a half ago, or whatever it was. He had played fantastic in that run. So I think what you're kind of looking at there is that this is just now he came in the NBA. It was a different game for him. My worry more is he didn't play great with Maine in the G League either. And I always worry if a guy's not down there lighting it up in the G League, I start to worry, is he going to have it at the NBA level?
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully, and they said Romeo is supposed to get his cast off, I think, later this week or top of next week.
Sorry, I had to put it on mute there so I wasn't coughing in everybody's ears. Yeah, he's gonna get his cast off. Then he'll get reevaluated. That'll set his timeline a little better. We'll have a sense now. Media, availabilities will be getting started here on the in the next couple of days as the team's getting everybody back together in Boston. So we'll get a better sense on where Romeo is actually at. It sounds like, though, what Danny Ainge had said pre-draft was that Romeo Langford was probably going to be out, into sometime in January, maybe even February, which makes sense just if you look at the surgery he had, which is, that's such a bummer because this is a guy who lost all of last off season. Then he, got very little time in the bubble because he was still hurting, and then got injured again. And now, for all that this offseason's been cut short, he is really kind of missing his development time here. So that's pretty tough.
Right. I think he can be a really good contributor if he can break. I think there's a spot open for him this year, more so than last year. Even if he was healthy, I'm not sure how much he would have really been able to play. So we had such a deep wing rotation already, but we just lost Hayward. I don't think Simi's going to play a lot later.
Yeah, that was it. Man, with the idea with Hayward being out, it looked like, all right, maybe Romeo can slide in there. Right, we all knew Hayward was going to leave at some point in the bubble anyway for the birth of his child. So it was like, well, maybe Romeo can slide in there. Just this guy just can't stay healthy so far. So I'm that worries me. Is that he is is he ever going to get past this? Because now this is really, we're starting to look at 3 straight years. If you go back to his year in Indiana as well as a freshman there, he wasn't healthy either. So that's really concerning of 3 straight years, kind of being waylaid by injuries at his age. That's a lot of court time lost.
Yeah. A lot of reps he's not getting, which he really needs to. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry to tell that.
Yeah. Okay. So you earlier you were talking about the trade deadline. With the season being shortened, is it when is that deadline going to be? Because I don't even know when the All-Star break is going to be.
No, you're good, man. You're not the only one. Nobody knows the trade deadline. They haven't announced it yet.
Okay.
They announced basically everything else except for that. And there is some question of one of the things that they're kind of looking at. I was told was maybe pushing the trade deadline. I don't want to say later, but this season is shortened. So one of the things they were looking at is, where could we put it at a time where hopefully by then there's a vaccine and COVID is calmed down, because the last thing teams want to do is trade for a guy and then he goes somewhere where he's got to go through a 14-day quarantine. With his new team, because that's 2 weeks lost out of a shortened season is tough. The All-Star break, we do know that's going to be in February is when that'll hit. So that'll hit. There's no All-Star game this year. So it's really just going to be a week off for everybody. And then they will get back together and get everything moving down the stretch after that.
Okay.
So are they still gonna announce All-Stars for the sake of their contracts?
Yeah, they'll still announce All-Stars. I assume they'll still be voting. The fan voting like there usually is. That would make sense to me. But yeah, they are still going to move forward down that path, because what they want to do is make sure guys are still getting the recognition. It's just not the right time and place to host a big event where that's like the NBA Super Bowl kind of
Right.
where, 1 million people pour into one place, and you got the All-Star weekend and then the game and
Yeah.
all the events and stuff around it. They don't want to have that, and I don't think they want anybody to miss out on the spectacle. And it was supposed to be in Indianapolis this year,
Mhm.
where the Pacers play, and it was and that now is being changed. They didn't want them to lose out, so they're going to get the All-Star game, I think, in 2024 or something like that. It's just been pushed back a few years.
Gotcha.
That feels a little weird though, because and correct me if I'm wrong, but does it not feel like at the beginning of the season, because we're starting in December, right?
Yep.
So that's like a month and a half or so. Like, how are we supposed to be
Yeah,
able to tell?
let me look. I'll get the exact timing for you,
Because that
it's
feels so
definitely-
weird.
I'm going to give you kind of the disclaimer, man. Everything's weird.
Yeah.
Super weird.
No,
And isn't,
everything feels weird with this year.
And isn't trade
Uh,
season still the same week it would start usually? Like even though there are no games prior to that day?
Yeah, we don't know. On the when the whole trade windows will open up and all that stuff. It's gonna be a little bit on that one before we have a full understanding with that. So yeah, it's February 14th was supposed to be the All-Star weekend this year, and then clearly that's not happening. So All-Star week, I think they're calling it now this year, and then that'll be that'll be what it'll be. But yeah, we're gonna get basically a week off, which I'll be honest, it's gonna come quick. But after the way everything has gone to this point, I'm not exactly upset because I'll be ready for it. All-Star break, March 5th to 10th is when it'll be.
Okay.
For that. And then what I'll also say too is this season's going to look different in so many ways. But this year they're going to do the season's going to be split in halves. So they're going to do the first half right up to the All-Star break, and then that All-Star break from back will be the second half. And the reason they're doing that is to allow flexibility if they have postponements and cancellations that they need to move around for games. So we're only going to get whenever we get the schedule, which that's like the other thing. People are like, when are we getting the schedule? When are we getting that?
Yeah.
That'll come, I'm guessing, probably within the next week. We'll get the schedule, considering games start 3 weeks from tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll
That's crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? But we're only going to get the first half. So we'll get 36 games or so in that range for each team. Because remember, it's only a 72 game season this year too.
And there's no bubble, right? It's everybody
no bubble,
as
no.
normal.
Yeah. So
I don't
everybody's
see
going to
how
be
this will
playing.
work.
Everybody's going to be playing in empty arenas
Okay.
for now. The only team that had announced plans to have fans for sure was the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they backtracked on that today. They decided they're not going to do that, so that they're going to get into it's going to be different with no fans, and then we'll just kind of move it along that way. So it'll look a little bit I think like Major League Baseball did. Just the difference is, right, with baseball, you fly in, you play 3-4 games in a city,
Right.
and then you fly out and you go to the next place for the next series. In basketball, you're going to come in, but they're going to try to do it where it's like, if you're coming into New York, you're going to play the Knicks, the Nets, probably the Sixers, the Celtics, all in one swoop, and then you'll go. Rather than each East Coast team taking 2 West Coast trips, they're probably only going to take 1. So when the Celtics go to the West Coast, they'll be gone for probably 2.5, 3 weeks maybe to play all the teams out there, and then they'll come back home. Going for a week, and then a few months later they go for another week.
Yeah, we said a few episodes back the Florida trip was gonna be the one that got the player.
yeah. That's it. Yeah, the Florida triangle now versus the old Texas triangle.
Miami for like a whole week or so. Miami or in Orlando for like a whole week.
Yeah.
We'll keep some of them boys inside.
Yeah, that's it, man. They'll need to they'll need to Magic will need to use that to their best recruiting, and they'll want the teams coming here and January, February, where it's like, see, it's 75 degrees.
Yeah.
We got cap space in a couple years.
Yeah, and
Right.
Toronto is going to be in Florida this season, right?
And Tampa, right?
In Tampa. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yep. The Raptors are going to play at least start the season in Tampa.
Okay.
We don't know how long because we don't know how long Canada's going to be closed essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was the challenge was they weren't going to be
Jesus.
able to come in and out of Canada, them or the opponents. So
Right.
they decided that they'll move to Tampa. So yeah, so they're going to play really for them second straight year down here in Florida.
Jeez, so that's like 2.5 weeks in both California and Florida that teams are looking at.
Well, I think the Florida trip, I don't know how, that one, because I mean, that's a 3-hour flight from Boston,
Mhm.
and that's about as far away in the East Coast as you get. So, that one's probably more come down, play, 3 games in 5 or 6 days, and then you'll head back up. But
No,
yeah, it's more of the coast to coast. But
yeah,
yeah, I do think though when teams come into Florida, they'll play the Magic, the Raptors, and the Heat. If the Celtics come in, they'll play those 3 teams and pretty quick fashion, and then they'll get out and move
yeah.
on and all that stuff.
Okay, cool. Gotcha.
And so Texas with Oklahoma, that'd be the same thing, right? Spurs, Houston.
Yeah, Spurs, Rockets, Mavs, Thunder. Yep. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
almost going to be like little pods, regional pods where you'll go in, but now it's not a true bubble because you're going to go from Dallas to Houston to San Antonio, but
yeah.
senses you're at least in the same region.
And just like how you go to the Midwest, you play the Pistons, the Bulls, the Pacers,
Yep.
and the
Most
Bucks
likely.
across. Yeah.
That's
Yep.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That could work out. All right, now, and recently, the class of 2017 signed their extensions this offseason. I think who was it? Tatum, Bam, Fox, and Mitchell
Yep.
all got the full matches, and Brandon Ingram, he's from the previous level. He got his match since he had the blood clot issues last year, was trying to hold him up a bit.
Yeah, he was from the previous year's draft class.
Yeah.
So what happened with him was his contract expired. He was a restricted free agent. So his max kicks in this year.
Yeah.
Whereas Tatum, Mitchell, Adebayo, and Fox, their max extensions will kick in next
year.
Yeah.
Right. Like I always say, I'm glad Jalen signed his contract a year early. He definitely got the max from like some other team this year, or maybe even us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was, and that was part of the reason why the Celtics wanted to get that done because they knew that Atlanta, Charlotte, Memphis, which they ended up making trades and not having cap space. But had they not gone that route, they knew those teams were sitting there ready to give Jalen a max offer sheet, and the Celtics would have then, been in a position where they would have had to match it. So I think, I think it's, that they did well to get him because they also got him for less than the max, which is
definitely
huge.
He's gonna bust him in the head a couple of years when it has the time to re-up again.
Yeah, if he keeps going this way, they ain't getting him less than the max again.
Get that money, my boy. But now there's one deal that stands out. It was Bam's. He got the full 5 years with no option after year 4.
Yep, and Fox, same thing.
And Fox, and Yep. But with Bam, people were saying if he held out a year, it would make their chances of signing Giannis a bit easier, which I think was pretty absurd. You don't tell a guy who actually finally earned his money, he has to wait for somebody to possibly come play with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those where you put faith and trust in the organization, right? The Spurs have done that before. The Pistons did that with Andre Drummond. Now that's a good example, right? With the Spurs, you put your faith in them and you trust it, right? Because they've got that track record. The Pistons, Drummond did it, and then that whole organization became a mess. So there's your balancing points, right? Where it's like, well, it worked out good once, and now it has not worked out so good.
So how does him taking the deal impact them possibly signing Giannis? So I think they say if he waited, they wouldn't have had to give up anybody. But now since he's locked in for the money, they will have to trade a couple pieces that summer if he were to agree to sign.
Yep. Yeah. So it doesn't remove the possibility. It just puts work on the Heat front office to be able to do it. Makes it a little harder.
Yeah.
Well, what they ended up doing with that was he would have had a cap hold of about 15 million. Now he's going to be on the books for about at least 28 million for next season. So that knocks 13 million off. So they just got to go find 13 million more. That may end
Yeah.
up costing them a player they'd rather keep, than not. But the reality is, I know there are Heat fans who will say, no, you can't trade Tyler Hero. If you're getting Giannis, you trade Tyler Hero.
Please.
You
Him and
pack
Duncan
his
Robinson
bags
out of
and
there.
drive him. Exactly. You drive him right to the airport and say, "Good luck in Milwaukee, young fella. See you later," or wherever you're trading them to, and then you bring in Giannis. So yeah, that's all. They just got a little. They've got now some work to do to make it happen.
Right. So how much would they have to? So Giannis is gonna make what across the match? So would his match be more since he signed with a new team, or would it still be around roughly as how much Bam makes?
It's going to be more than Bam. So max salaries are split into tiers. There's three different tiers based on experience. So Bam's is 28 million. Giannis's would be if he resigns with the Bucks. Like if he does it right now, he can get 39 million.
Yeah, since he's
From
has
them.
the MVPs and the defensive
Correct.
player of the year, so
Yep.
he hit all his incentives to
Yeah,
make
that's
the
it. So
big money
he's
too.
hit all the qualifiers. Yep.
Yeah.
So then if he signs with somebody else, it's a first year salary of 33.7 million. Is well what he can get. So 5.6 million. But once you're talking 30 plus $1 million, that 5.6, you don't worry about that if you'd rather
Yeah, pretty much.
At all.
right.
Right. So they would realistically have to cut at least like Robinson and Hero and at least one other guy.
Yeah,
At least two guys are out there.
Yeah, they've just got to make some moves to make it happen if that's what they want to do. It's not impossible because the way they structured all their contracts this offseason is everybody has team options that they brought in. Bam is the only guy they've signed that has money that carries beyond this year, outside of Precious Achua, who they drafted in the first round. So their only guaranteed salaries on their books are Precious Achua, Bam, Jimmy Butler, and then KZ Okpala, who was a second round pick a couple years ago. So what you'd be looking at there is you probably then you start that's where you start playing some of the cap games with a guy like Goran Dragic, where it's like, all right, we're gonna renounce you. We're not gonna keep your free agent rights, but then a year from now, we'll re-sign you to a small deal, and then we'll take care of you again a year from now. You could do that too with guys like Myers Leonard if you wanted to, Andre Iguodala, those kind of guys. But yeah, they can get there. It's just as I've been kind of putting it to people, is they made it a little bit harder on themselves, but that's a good smart front office. They'll figure it out if they need to.
Yeah. But and they kind of had to do that anyway too. Like I said, that's your star player. You don't want to straddle the lines of making him a little unhappy. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's it. You said it before too. It can be tough to ask a guy, hey, can you wait? The other thing is Bam and Giannis have the same agent, so you better believe there's some
tampering. Go ahead and say it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's tampering necessarily, but I think it's a little more of a, let's call it information sharing. Because I don't think anybody from the Heat is openly going to come out and start recruiting. Giannis. I think it's more let's hey, what's going on long term? What's that kind of happening? And that's just a conversation between friends, right?
Right. Especially if it's off the books, we can't hear about it. So
yeah,
almost like it never happened, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where you do one of those where it's like, wait, what? No, we didn't talk about that.
And another guy, Mitchell Sandholm. Go ahead there.
No, I was just going to ask, like, for example, if they were actually trying to target Giannis, then their hopes of even targeting Bradley Beal, that's pretty much out the window, right?
Yeah, there's not a reasonable path to bringing in all those guys.
Yeah.
Not, I mean,
one or none.
you could get there if you could convince Washington to do a, with sign and trades and those
Mhm.
kind of things, where you start sending guys out, via sign and trade. You could make things like that happen. It just gets, that once you start getting, I always tell people it's hard enough to make, two people making a trade for one player one way and one player another way.
Mm-hmm.
It is that is hard enough. Start adding in, all right, well, what about a third team? What about sign and trades? What about this? What about that? Now that's why you can see teams, teams don't make trade. It's not your fantasy league, right? Where you just start flipping guys all over the place because you're bored in the office one afternoon. It's like, let's talk trade, man. I got nothing to do. It's let's do that. It's this takes time. The other thing you got to remember too is these are real human beings.
Right.
So if you're start talking, hey, yeah, we could do a sign and trade and we'll send this guy, and then we're gonna do a Tyler Hero to the Wizards, and then Tyler Hero hears that, you better believe he's going into Pat Riley, Andy Ellisberg, the front office, and saying, hey, what's the deal? Like are we, am I being traded? Like what are we doing here?
Right.
So that's just kind of where it goes.
Right. That's like what Danny had to do with Jalen and Tatum last year during the AD scenario.
Yeah.
Where he said around the deadline he had to put them in like some time in advance to kind of like talk them off the ledge a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and guys don't like that, right? Because it's tough. I'll never forget. I was there was a lot of people were going crazy when Serge Ibaka got traded to Toronto from Orlando for Terrence Ross, and there were a lot of Magic fans that are like, why is Ibaka not already in Toronto, physical done, ready to go? Because Ross couldn't play for the Magic for like an additional day because they had them because Ibaka hadn't reported to Toronto yet. And I had to consistently remind people like, hey, let's I'll take a deep breath here, because what's going on with this guy is Ibaka is picking up and moving from Florida to Toronto. It's a whole other ass country, right?
Yeah.
Like let's not forget that part of it. And there's all this stuff of where people need to go to get all this figured out. It's not as easy as just well, you're there, and I think people look at it as, man, I made the trade on 2K and the guy played the next game for me. It's like, yeah, that's 2K. That's not real life.
Yeah.
And they'll just have to find housing on the fly too. So they have their families and stuff, and like you said, a whole another country. So now it's the clearances that you have to fill out to move into another country.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it that I think it just gets easily forgotten that these are real people, and it's not easy to just pick up, and then people fire, well, they're millionaires, I don't care. Yeah, they don't make it any easier. There's still stuff that needs to happen. So yeah.
Right. And another guy who signed extension, Mitchell, aren't the Jazz gonna have to make the decision on Gobert pretty soon too?
Yeah. So Gobert's in the last year of his contract, so he is extension eligible as well.
And he's Supermax eligible too, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, because he's got the Defensive Player of the Year award. So he's not going to get that though.
No, absolutely not.
Hell no.
Yeah, so that's not going to happen. But he's still going to get paid, a good big contract, because he's still very, very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to ultimately see what happens with him, because there's a question of, if you're the Jazz, you've got pretty good money invested in some of your role players like Bogdanovich, Ingles, Clarkson, Favors, Mike Conley for this year at least. So then do you want to lock into Mitchell and then Gobert for 5 for a ton of extra money? Like that's where it starts to question, like, how deep in the luxury tax are you willing to go for this Jazz team?
And they're a small market team, and they're on the clock to keep Mitchell happy at this point.
Yeah. I mean, now you're on a little bit less of a clock. I mean, I guess you're on a 4-year clock now
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you just got him for 4 additional years at least. He's got that player option, so he could step up. But yeah, it's one of those things where anytime you're a small market team and you've got a superstar, you want to keep putting teams around them to keep pushing things forward so that they keep winning and they don't have a desire to go anywhere else.
Absolutely. So it's gonna be a pretty interesting one to watch. Doesn't Buddy want out the Kings or something like that?
Yeah, I mean
Rumors
that
are
was
teaching.
out there. I think that was more when they had Bogdanovich too.
Yeah.
And it was,
Okay.
and that was starting to get a little crowded in that backcourt and all those things. It's one of those things where a lot of guys want a lot of stuff in the off season, and then as you get into training camp, everybody's happy, and it's like, I just want to be here. You do become, you do become appreciative when the one guy comes in. He's like, "No, man, I said I want to trade it, months ago, and that hasn't changed here."
Right.
But I think you're good with that.
Okay. And last but not least, of course, Tatum ascension. So that kicks in next year. So
Yep.
what does the Celtics cap outlook for the next, let's say, 3 years, since they have at least him, Jalen, and Kimba, and also Smart is up after next season? Yeah.
Yeah, you're not gonna. The Celtics aren't gonna have cap space for a while. It's gonna be a little bit. It's probably gonna be at least a good 3 more seasons. Unless they start making moves, when you see Kemba off the team for for with nothing coming back, and those kind of things. Those would be what you would be looking at there. But what I would say with that though is highly unlikely. Right. That's not going to happen. He's too important to the team, and then you've got Tatum coming in, Brown's on his near max extension. It's so close, it might as well be a max. And then, like you said, you've got Smart will need a new contract after next season, not this coming one. So he's got 2 more years under contract, and then to whatever they do with this trade exception, if you bring in a guy who makes $20 million. That adds to it. So what the Celtics are going to be more concerned with going forward is, room and dodging in and around the luxury tax than they are going to be. They're not going to be a cap space team for years to come.
Right. And Which said, I want to say like a year or so ago, that he would pay the luxury tax or would be fine with it if they do have a real chance of contending.
Yep, he did. Yeah, he's been consistent on that. That goes all the way back to when they first bought the team. Is that they'll pay for a winner? They're happy to pay a luxury tax. Now, they're not the Warriors, right? That's nobody's paying hundreds of millions of dollars in luxury tax except for Golden State, and that's a unique. Yeah,
they're paying for loyalty at this point. So
and that's a unique situation that kind of came together that you'll never see come together like that again, probably. But I think for the Celtics, if they needed to go $10 to $15 million into the tax, I think you could easily see them do that.
Right. So so for Smart next year, do you see him commanding at least 20?
Yeah, it's going to be tough because what is Marcus now? He's 26, so
he's at
27 this year, 28. So he'll be a 28
he's
year old
making
free agent.
12, 13 million a year.
He's at 13 and a half, and then 14.3 the year after. So my guess is probably somewhere around the 15, 16. Maybe you start him around 18, and then you have that deal decline as it goes. That's more of a way to kind of take care of him, because the thing you worry about with Marcus too is the way he plays. Is he going to hold up? Right. I mean, he already always misses 10 to 15 games a year, or at least should, because he'll play another 10 to 15 where he shouldn't play, because of injuries. So yeah, that gets tough with him. So but just kind of view him where the league is headed. I think that's what you're kind of looking at is probably something in that 15 to $18 million range in first year salary. And the Boston would do well to front load that and have it decline, just to kind of as his play drops off, they're taking care of.
So
and he's go ahead there.
No, I was gonna say, do you like see guys like Grant or maybe even Tremont like getting a big extension when it's that time? Because that's going to be like another 3 years from now, right?
Yeah, I mean Waters, he's only got one more year on the two-way, and then after this year, they gotta kind of do something with him to either put him on the roster or not. I think that a lot of that will come down to how Peyton Pritchard develops this year. If he looks pretty good, then I think you feel good about what you got at point guard, and you probably let Tremont Waters go somewhere where we can have a bigger role. If Pritchard doesn't look so good, then yeah, you probably look to bring Waters back on the team. Grant Williams, I mean, he's still got this year plus 2 more years on his rookie scale. So he's got a little bit. Same with Langford, obviously. They're on the same timeline. And then it's Robert Williams is after this, coming season. He'll be, a year from now. Well, not a year from now, but next summer, Robert Williams will be, extension eligible. And we'll see what happens, with him. This is probably a big year for him health and development wise. Because it seems like every time he is just finally starting to get going, he bruises his hip and then he's out for 3 weeks, or he bangs up his back and then he's out for a week and a half, and I think that's more so than anything else made it tough for Brad Stevens to trust him with more than 10-15 minutes a game. Because you just you don't know if he's going to be there or not. So this is a big year for him. I think Tristan Thompson will be big for him. I think he can really
definitely
learn from Tristan Thompson quite a bit of how to be a pro and deal with some things, and then Time Lord's got the he's got athletic abilities that Tristan Thompson wishes he had, right? So that's I mean, he can learn all the tricks of the trade from Thompson, and then he can do his his thing from then apply his athleticism on top of that.
Definitely. Right. Oh, that's what we're doing. And somebody mentioned earlier, a guy who was it? Jeremy Grant got almost close to $20 million a year?
Yeah.
Or a little under. So what does him getting that deal do for the market of like just higher quality role players or starters, I guess?
Yeah, it's next year is gonna be one of those years where we see a lot of guys get contracts where you're like, wait, who? For how much? Because about half of the league is probably gonna have cap space, and a meaningful amount of it too.
Yeah.
And then while it's a very good free agent class, if everybody kind of opts out and becomes free agents that can be, that goes very quickly, right? We always see that in those years. Like think about last summer, right? There was all these great free agents, but there was, let's say, 10 really good free agents. Once they were off the board, there were still like 7 teams like, well, we still have cap space. And now who do we spend it on? And that's when you have the Knicks, signing 38 power forwards for $10 million a year, right? So it becomes, with a guy like Jeremy Grant, what now though players and agents are thrilled about is they can look at it and say, here's a guy who is a part-time starter. He's good, but he's not great. And he got $20 million a year. My guy's worth at least, 15. That's where you're going to. If you're a kind of mid-tier free agent next offseason, that's the guy you're kind of pointing towards, because you're kind of getting out there and saying, whoa, hey, wait a minute, if you're going to pay this guy this much, this is what my guy's worth. And then never mind the guys who are a little bit better than Grant. Right, those guys are going to be guys who are going to be coming in. Like imagine if a guy like Otto Porter bounces back and has a good year with the Bulls, and as a free agent, he's going to be like, "Give me that Jeremy Grant money plus."
Absolutely.
Because, I'm not cool with making 25 million or whatever.
Yeah, and that was my thing with Smart being a free agent the year after Nets. Till I said, if guys that are like, I guess, on his tier of impact or a little below are making 15 or 20 a year, and that carries over in the next summer, then when it's his time, he might really be looking to cash him. That's his priority.
Yeah. Now the good thing for the Celtics is by the time we get to 2022, because all those teams will spend all that cap space in 2021, it won't be the same market, right? They won't be able to spend quite the same way. Now on the flip side of that, you've got Smart saying, yeah, but you got my bird rights. Like, you take care of me. Who cares what other teams can do?
Right.
So that's and his contract that he's on now didn't exactly go, it wasn't poorly, but it didn't go real smooth either.
Yeah, that's what
Remember, it dragged out a little while.
It did.
yeah,
So,
I was talking to Dotsie about it. That's what
yeah.
happened. His last contract, he
Yep,
tried
2
to
years ago.
hold out a little bit, but
Yep.
the market he thought was there for himself wasn't there.
Yep.
Which
dried
eventually
up.
led him to, like, I want to say, we were like well into summer league by the time he actually re-signed.
Yep.
Yeah. So his market was there. Then he eventually re-signed for what was like a little bit of a discount or whatever. Since this is where he
about
wanted to be
13
anyway, I
million
guess.
average a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's smart too is that there's this any guy like him, you got to look at it and say what's his value around the league versus value to the Celtics.
Right.
Yeah.
Because right now, no team in the league is going to value him more than the Celtics. We see that in trade talks, right?
For sure.
You guys probably see on Twitter, on message boards, or wherever people are like, they should trade Marcus Smart and Kemba Walker for this guy. And everybody's like, can't give up those two. What are you crazy? Marcus Smart, what are you insane? And it's like, and then people like, because all they see is, the one game where he went 0 for 13 against their team.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't see the games, where he goes 5 for 5 from deep and makes, 50 defensive plays that no one else in the league makes at his size.
Yeah.
And those are the things when you watch him every single game, you appreciate him so much more, than the average fan who's only, catching him, every 2-3 weeks against their team or on a national televised game. So yeah, that's the other thing you got to weigh too. And then again, his injury history, his age, those are things that are kind of working.
His ceiling too, if this is it.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if he's
how
going to
much
keep getting
more is he
better.
going to develop? Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you get to be 26, 27, it's pretty rare that guys develop. But I think for Smart, he is he's now turned himself into a pretty good shooter. He's a little streaky, but he makes shots. So I think that is something that is important with him.
Definitely.
Yeah. So contracts that seem to be immovable at this point. Russell Westbrook
Hayward.
and Harden. Yeah.
That's true. Not even dry yet.
John Wall.
Yeah.
Do you see those guys getting traded? Because we've heard, of course, the talk about Westbrook or Harden possibly moving or wanting out, and a rumor about John Wall actually saying that he wanted to be traded when he came out and denied it. Do you see a possibility of any three of those guys being traded?
Yeah, it gets tough now. No, here's it. Right, it's the NBA. No contracts truly untradeable. Right. We see even the worst contracts get moved. But what gets tough now is we're only a couple weeks away from teams. They don't have those extra roster spots, right? Everybody can go up to 20-man rosters right now because it's the off season. So that gives you a little bit of flexibility, right? Look at Oklahoma City, right? They've got 20 guys on their roster right now. Just because of all the trades and shuffling that they've done. So they could make a move where they could send, 4 or 5 guys out. But once you get into the season, you can't really do that. The other thing is, let's use Russ as an example, 40 million plus. That you're talking, unless you've got another 40, unless it's, Russ for John Wall, which works straight up.
Yeah.
You're having to send out probably 3, 4, 5 guys in salary matching to make that trade work.
Right.
So then what happens is now you have gutted your depth. Houston probably has to waive a bunch of guys just to fit in all the guys they're getting.
Yeah.
Or you got to find a third team that has magically an open roster spot or two. So it gets really complicated to move those giant contracts once you're in season. I think what we're going to see happen here is now let's look at the way the Rockets in particular are building out their roster.
Right.
They're not exactly taking on a bunch of guaranteed contracts here. For let's call it roster spots 10 through 15. They've left themselves pretty flexible.
Right.
in that situation. So I think what you're going to see with the Rockets is if they wanted to do a James Harden trade to, let's just say, Brooklyn, where Brooklyn sends them 4 or 5 guys, they'll be able to absorb him a lot easier, right? They can bring those guys in because they'll just move off those guys who are at the very end of the bench.
Right.
And that's how they'll move into that. But doing those big salary trades, you just don't see them in season because it's just so hard to put together. I do think they'll move. I just think it's probably more likely next season. Now it's Harden too, right? If you got to figure it out, of course you're doing it because it's James Harden. Exactly.
Right.
The rest of those guys, it's a little more questionable. If you want to give up half your team to go get a guy like that.
Yeah, definitely. And the other big name that's gonna be on the market, I said Giannis. So what is the next year? So if you're in the Bucks front office, what is this next season looking like for you?
Well, you're hopeful he signs the Supermax now that he's back, right?
Yeah.
And that takes it off the table, and you don't have to do anything else. I think the challenge for the Bucks is, it's 2020, and as much as this year's been awful, we have the technology to do all sorts of document signing, and you don't got to be in the same room.
Exactly.
That said, there was always this sense that until he got back from Milwaukee, this was going to drag out a little bit. My guess, and from talking to people around the league, is you don't make that kind of all-in Drew Holiday trade unless you feel really good that Giannis is going to sign. Because otherwise, if you trade all your future first-round picks, Giannis doesn't sign, and then he leaves, you're done, right? You're out the door. There's no chance, that front office is going to last to be the guys who make the next round of picks. So what I think you're looking at with Milwaukee is they're hopeful Giannis signs. If he doesn't, it's going to be a question daily of every time they go on the road and they meet with the media somewhere else, it's going to be hey, what are you thinking about free agency? To the point where it's going to get old and he's not going to want to answer it, and they're
especially
not going to
the Miami trip.
Yeah, exactly. Miami, Dallas, Toronto, all those places that are, left a kind of a spot open for him. Those are the places where, you're going to be just kind of trying to figure that out if you're him. But it's definitely going to be messy. You want to get him signed if you can. Now, a lot of people say, well, would you trade him if you can't? They've held to, they won't.
Absolutely not.
Do that because they think what you're hopeful is even if he doesn't sign, you're hopeful you can still go win a championship. And despite falling short the last couple of years, they're going to be in the mix. So you're hopeful that he can push you there. And then at the end, it's very hard for a guy to walk away from a title team.
Right. I say all the time, the real elite guys, you never trade without them verbally saying you want to trade. The LeBrons, the KDs, the Giannis, AD last year, unless they say out their mouth to you, I want to trade, you do not trade them. No matter you ride the ship till it sinks.
And even then, your answer might be, well, that's good. There's a lot of things I want that I'm not getting to. So
exactly.
I want you to stay. How about that?
Yeah, like when Harden wanting to trade with 2 years left on his contract. No, you don't trade Harden off. No.
Nah.
You ride it till it sinks, baby.
Yeah,
that's it, man. Yeah, you have to with those guys. Otherwise, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, you'll never get another one.
So how now the Bogdanovich sign and trade deal that did not happen with Milwaukee, how impactful do you think that actually is to them re-signing Giannis?
Yeah, that's pretty big. All reports are that those two guys wanted to play together. That they're buddies from overseas, that they had been kind of talking about teaming up. So that's definitely a challenge. For them, we'll see, if there's any carryover, I guess. I think it is a little bit of a challenge for them to be, to rebuild from that because they just don't have the, they just don't have the, how do I put it? They don't have the depth, within that roster now to feel really good. about what they've got. They did an okay job bouncing back with guys like DJ Augustine, Bobby Portis, Torrey Craig on the minimum was a great get for them.
Yeah.
So they got good players, but part of what made that team so special a year ago was their depth. They went 11, 12 guys deep in real NBA players. Right. So anytime somebody was out with, a rolled ankle and they were going to miss a couple games, they just kept chugging along. Now, as you look at it, it's a little more like, how are we going to, get by, especially up front? I mean, their front court depth is laughably bad. Yeah. It's, Bobby Portis is the only big of value coming off their bench. And the other challenge is they've removed just about every ability that they had to get better because they're working under the hard cap now. They're also, they just have limited trade assets. It's kind of Dante DiVincenzo, and that's about it. So it's going to be really tough for this team to improve. I think what they did is they made themselves better in their starting group, worse off their bench. And ultimately that may mean that they are a little bit closer to the rest of the Eastern Conference as a regular season team than they were previous.
Right. But that might help them in the playoffs because I think their issue in the playoffs was going too deep when you should have.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, when you're getting into that later in that Magic series and that Miami series, and they're talking about how Giannis and Middleton can't play 35, 40 minutes a night, that's like, what are we doing here? So,
right.
so take a few guys away, and they have to do that in the regular season. You should be good to ask them to then do that in the playoffs. The other thing, though, there is something said if they have to push a little harder in the regular season, are they still feeling as good when you get to the postseason? Exactly. So there's always a give and take. But I have a lot of issues with the way the Bucks are run up top. And it doesn't. I think they are built to be a fantastic regular season team. Then once you get to the playoffs, a little bit of a different game, and I don't know that they're built to handle that.
Right. Yeah, because my I think for me the first domino was Malcolm Brogdon going to Indiana and not being staying there. That to me was probably the thing that really hurt them the most, because now you're looking at what Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton as your other guys. Like that's
right.
I don't see it.
Well, I mean, Chris Middleton's really good. So I will give him all the credit in the world. He's been one of my favorite guys for a long, long time. But I do think it is I do think it is a little tricky with them now. Their challenge now is the guy goes down for long term or anything like that, they're really in trouble because they're just not gonna. Now what do you do? You just don't have that depth.
Then you got to put it on a little extra load on Giannis during the regular season.
Exactly.
And he's only been playing barely 30 minutes a game the past 2 years during the regular season.
Right.
So now you don't even know if that might frustrate him a little bit, especially if they incur a little extra losses than they've been used to. So it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy.
Don't look that
Nah.
How quick it changes in the NBA too, right? It looked like that team was going to be on top for a while, and then all of a sudden you're, here we are, and you're not there. So I hear you, man. It goes quick. It's like people think you're going to be on top forever, and it just it doesn't work out that way very often.
Yeah, case in point, the Thunder, and and Golden State. We thought the Warriors had at least another 3 years in them, but now it's looking like injuries and kind of really permanently killed their dynasty. So
yeah,
no doubt.
Well, you enjoy these things while it lasts, so that was a fun. All right. Sure. But all right, Chief, we appreciate you showing. And to end every show, we do a top 5 segment where I ask the guests 5 questions specifically for them.
All right.
I'm not 5 questions, but they're 5 favorite on a couple of questions. There we go.
Good.
All right, so here's some questions straight for you. Ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, as usual with the generic basketball question, then we get your 5 favorite players. You can either do current or ever. So when you choose.
Well, whatever you want to do.
Give me 5 all-time players, 5 favorites. Not the best, just the favorites.
All right, so just my favorite players.
Yeah.
Larry Bird,
Mhm.
Michael Jordan. God, this is blasphemous, but Magic. Just growing up in Boston, but I loved watching Magic play. Man, that high dribble, like that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. KG, and then I'll go with another guy because I was one of the tall kids for a long time. Kevin McHale. I
Nah,
loved watching Kevin McHale play.
there we go. Nice. All right, let me get your 5 favorite TV shows.
Ooh, 5 favorite TV shows. The Office.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I got a fellow Office fan there.
Yes, sir.
It's tough. Game of Thrones before the end.
Right.
Because I
Love
kind
Game
of
of Thrones.
ruined that. Yeah, Game
Yeah,
of Thrones was great.
I didn't get past I stopped at season 6 and everybody said the last 2 seasons suck.
Yeah, you're probably okay.
The very last.
Just imagine it in your head, and that's probably better.
Right.
Than what you thought. Geez, I'm not. There's TV shows I like, but I'm not like a huge TV show guy.
That's fine. 3 more you like then. I said your
Yeah,
favorite.
let me. It's done now, but The Big Bang Theory, I like that a lot. Modern Family was a favorite for me and my wife.
All right.
Good one.
Yeah, we're not big on like serious stuff. Like it's more funny.
Hey, that's fine.
I'll tell you. Well, I'll give you one right now. It's absolute trash television, and no one should ever watch it. But we've been watching a lot of Below Deck. I don't know if you've ever watched this show.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What an absolute dumpster fire of a TV show. But it's like you watch one episode and the next thing you know, your whole day has been spent watching these people. It's like, what is wrong with you? How do you live like this? So I'll throw that one on the list.
Nice. And all right, last one. Your 5 favorite musicians.
Jeez. It's tough too. My all-time favorite is the Beastie Boys.
Okay.
Really like the Counting Crows. Public Enemy.
Okay.
I'm all over the board here because probably the next one's probably Dave Matthews Band. So like I'm alternating between rap groups and
that's
rock,
fine.
pop. I don't know what they call it.
Your preference,
And then I don't know. I don't think I have another one. I can't think of another one off the top of my head.
That's all good, man. We appreciate you coming on. Sit with us.
Of course, man. No, thank you for having me.
Anytime.
I appreciate it.
We really enjoyed you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
Definitely.